Hi, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. This video is going to be a little different than the ones I have done in the past. If you are familiar with the channel, you know that I typically discuss a single novel in depth for 10 minutes or so, give or take a minute or two. Some videos I have discussed 2 or maybe 3 books at most. But in this one, I am going to do a bit of a montage. I am going to share my thoughts on 7 books that I've read. Each review will be relatively short. So all in all, this video won't be that much longer than typical video here, but you will get a lot more bang for your buck in terms of the number of books that I discuss. So here we go. Okay, so the first title up in my montage is The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. This infectious, sentimental book is primarily a coming-of-age story that focuses on mother-daughter relationships and dealing with the early loss of a loved one. But since it's set in the South in the 1960s, when African Americans first received the right to vote, and it is a group of black women whom the lead character comes to stay with and learn valuable life lessons from, race also plays a prominent role in the plot, race and racism. For readers not up to grappling with literary works as heavy as, say, The Bluest Eye or Native Son, a novel such as The Secret Life of Bees can serve as a primer, I would say. The message goes down easily with Monk's easily digestible style of writing, but that makes it no less important and may encourage readers to later check out novels with more substantial things to say about the ways that we treat each other. Aside from matters of race, this book has insightful things to say about prematurely ended mother-daughter relationships that has endeared it to many. Next up is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I read The Kite Runner basically to see what the big fuss was about. It had received quite a bit of hype, and I wanted to find out if it would live up to it. And I'd say that it pretty much did. When all is said and done, it may not end up in the canon of classic literature, but I can certainly see why it was such a popular summer read recommendation. The author tells a compelling story that draws you in immediately and doesn't let go until the dramatic end. The characters are richly drawn and true to everyday life, even though the elements of this story that brought so much attention to it in the first place would be its exotic setting, thus proving the point that our similarities are far more striking and significant than our surface differences. I highly recommend The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. And now I will share my thoughts about Mark Haddon's The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, a rather peculiar title for a strange, unusual, and very entertaining novel. It's a quirky story told from a unique point of view that leads to innumerable smiles and a good number of chuckles from the reading audience. That point of view is from the mind of an autistic individual. I had never heard of this book when it was loaned to me, but I'm so glad that it found its way into my hands. There are plenty of more ambitious books out there, and plenty of books that are more impressively written. But many of them end up being completely forgotten over the passage of time. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, on the other hand, is a distinctive tale that I suspect I will fondly recall for a very long time. I did another video here at Roy's Book Reviews for a book called Motherless Brooklyn that this story reminds me of a little bit, in that the main character of Motherless Brooklyn has Tourette syndrome. The main character in The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime is autistic. So therefore, we are seeing the world through the eyes, the ears, the minds of individuals who do not behave and think like the average person, everyday person that you will deal with in your life. So it's very interesting to see the world from an angle that you are not used to seeing it from, and noticing all the ways that it is similar as well as the many ways that it's quite different from those of us who are not having to deal with these various mental struggles, but we see them as mental struggles. They just see them as the way things are. I do recommend The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime for its interesting perspective and for its entertaining story. I consider the book I want to talk about now to be a modern masterpiece. It is Everything is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer. The charmingly quirky characters in this book will stick in your mind long after reading this wonderful novel. The hysterical narration has great fun with butchering the English language in inventive ways. This book reads like 2 or 3 or maybe more great stories all rolled into one deliciously complex novel. When you're going to write about something as terrible as the Holocaust, humor is a brilliant way to delicately approach it. Everything is Illuminated blew me away. It's a novel that I cannot praise anymore than just to say, go out, grab a copy, and start reading it immediately. A novel written this beautifully comes along no more frequently than once per decade, if that often. My highest recommendation, go check it out. Sad songs, they say so much, and so do sad novels. The heartbreaking book that I am going to talk about now is The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, which I found to be a very well-told tale. It's a book that stood out from the pack for me, due in part to its unique point-of-view narration. Perhaps I'm drawn to such literature, or maybe it's just a coincidence that I've read several books that fit this description, that description being books that are narrated or spoken to the audience from someone who is not like the average person that you would encounter in your day-to-day, someone who sees the world in very different way for one reason or another. In the case of The Lovely Bones, the unique point of view narration is from the grave. The narrative device is only as effective as the prose is skillfully rendered. And The Lovely Bones definitely pulls off not only the interesting viewpoint, but also just the tragic, awful, beautiful story that it tells in wonderful fashion. It deserves all the kudos that it received. I am now going to discuss a story found within the pages not of a novel, but a novella. A great novella by an author whose prose dazzles, whether he's giving us an epic novel or opting for brevity, such as he does in Chronicle of a Death Foretold. I am speaking of the one and only Gabriel Garcia Marquez. His novel Love in the Time of Cholera may be my all-time favorite book, running neck and neck with The Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde and The World According to Garp. For those who have not read Love in the Time of Cholera or Marquez's masterful 100 Years of Solitude yet, and perhaps wish to sample his prose in a smaller scale first, Chronicle of a Death Foretold is an excellent introduction to this literary genius. It is an ode to inevitability and acceptance of fate, though in the world of Marquez, one's destiny is not necessarily the obvious or most easily obtained, but rather what one feels in his heart and soul cannot be denied, no matter how many obstacles indicate the contrary. There is a fine line between the great romantic and the stalker, between the fatalist and the honorable realist. And Marquez draws this line with charming eloquence in this wonderful novella, Chronicle of a Death Foretold. I highly recommend that you check it out. I definitely recommend that you read his novel, Love in the Time of Cholera, which is just such a spellbinding book that I don't have the words to express how incredibly powerful that novel is. It's rather polarizing, depending on whether you see the main character as a man who's deeply in love or a man who's deeply in stalk mode. But I'm not talking about that book right now. I'm talking about Chronicle of a Death Foretold, which is less polarizing, many fewer pages, and wonderfully written. Last but not least, The Confessions of Max Tivoli. This was a fascinating read about a man who ages backwards, starting off with the body of an old man and mind of an infant, and ending up in the reverse situation. Despite this science fiction type scenario, The Confessions of Max Tivoli basically belongs in the category of absorbing literature anchored by an ill-fated love affair. Most of us have far less dramatic reasons for things not working out with the great loves of our lives than Max Tivoli. Yet ultimately, our reasons are all one and the same. The timing was not quite right. I was absorbed right from the start of this book and totally connected with the doomed narrator, hoping against hope that his plight would lead to a happy ending, knowing that even when this is an impossibility, it doesn't mean that one's dreams can't be fulfilled, even if only temporarily, along the way. After all, life isn't all about the inescapable end. It's about the along the way. So that wraps up my montage of book reviews. I recommend all of these novels and novellas. You should check out as many of them as you can get your hands on. Even if you read only one or two, I've already read a couple of them. I encourage you to drop a line in the comments. Let me know what you thought of them. Please consider hitting the like button on this video. Please consider subscribing if you do not already subscribe to my channel. Until next time, happy reading.